The crystalline spires of Xanthes Prime glittered against the void like a surgeon's scalpel poised above an open wound. Inside the orbital platform's central chamber, the Galactic Terraforming Committee convened in a symphony of clinical precision. Holographic schematics of Earth rotated above the diamond-tiled floor, each layer of the planet's biosphere dissected into neat, color-coded strata. Chair being Vrixtal of the Elthari Dominion, a being of 4 articulated limbs and a carapace polished to a bureaucratic sheen, tapped a chitinous finger against the display, zooming in on a flickering red dot labeled Homo sapiens, tertiary nuisance. Phase 1 commences in 17 standard cycles, Vrixtal intoned, vocal sac inflating with the weight of inevitability. Atmospheric recalibration will induce optimal docility parameters. The species' self-destructive tendencies suggest a 94% probability of voluntary population decline. A murmur of approval rippled through the committee. The Quell delegates, methane breathers encased in pressurized exosuits, bobbed their bulbous heads in unison, their triple-jointed fingers skimming data tablets. The harmony nodes are primed for dispersal, hissed Quell 3, its voice filtered through a rebreather. Pheromonal saturation will ensure compliance without the mess of direct intervention. At the far end of the crescent-shaped dais, the Zix Collective's representative pulsed a muted shade of consensus blue. Irrelevant variables have been purged from our models, droned the hive mind's single mouthpiece, its gelatinous form rippling. Human emotional volatility falls within acceptable margins of error. Vrixtal's mandibles twitched in what passed for a smile among the Elthari. Precisely! Their history of tribal warfare and resource mismanagement indicates a lack of cohesive resistance. Any outliers will be statistically negligible. A new hologram bloomed above the table, Earth's future, stripped of its chaotic greenery and repackaged into geometric farm grids and climate-controlled megacities. The oceans, now a docile turquoise, lapped obediently at desalinated shores. Vrixtal gestured with 2 upper limbs, savoring the elegance of it all. Observe the efficiency of our biome replacement protocol. The uplift pods will outcompete native flora within 18 months. As for fauna, a flick of a lower limb summoned an image of the GTC's genetically tailored herbivores, their 6-legged forms grazing placidly in synchronized herds. These constructs lack the aggression of Earth's outdated predators. A self-sustaining nutrient cycle, the Quell exhaled a satisfied plume of methane, a flawless blueprint. Indeed. Vrixtal's ocular clusters dimmed in pleasure. By the time Phase 3 deploys, the humans will either adapt to their new role as custodians of our optimized ecosystems, or extinguish themselves through stubbornness, finished the Zix Collective, its surface flickering with amusement. A chime sounded. The committee's attention snapped to a secondary screen where a lone human figure, Dr. Kriya Ilara Voss, her credentials flashing in dismissive yellow, attempted to submit a research brief titled Behavioral Contingencies, Spite as a Survival Mechanism. Vrixtal's mandibles clacked once in irritation. Relegate this to the tertiary archive. The Elthari emotional dampeners alone render such concerns obsolete. With a flick, the report vanished into the depths of the GTC's databanks unread. Somewhere beneath its swirling clouds, a child kicked over an anthill just to watch the chaos. A teenager hacked into a municipal weather system to make it rain frogs. A retired engineer, Javier Ruiz, saved seeds from his grandmother's garden and labeled them for the apocalypse. The committee's models hummed, pristine and unassailable. Not a single algorithm accounted for the human grinning at a Harmony Node's prototype schematic, already dreaming of ways to turn pacification into a weapon. The first of the harmony nodes descended from the sky like silver seeds, glinting in the sunlight as they embedded themselves in city squares, atop skyscrapers, and along rural highways. The Galactic Terraforming Committee had calculated their placement with geometric precision, ensuring optimal atmospheric saturation of the pacification pheromones, a cocktail of neurochemical obedience designed to render humans docile, cooperative, and, most importantly, compliant. They had not accounted for the man in Detroit who licked one. Tastes like burnt marshmallows and existential dread, he reported to his friends, who immediately began daring each other to press their faces against the humming metal surface. By sundown, the node's emissions had been repurposed into a recreational drug, dubbed Zen by the local underground. Dr. Alara Voss watched the reports flood in from her makeshift lab, her fingers steepled under her chin. The GTC's behavioral models had predicted lethargy, mild euphoria, perhaps a slight decrease in violent tendencies. Instead, they got riots in Stockholm where protesters weaponized node emissions in aerosol cans, turning police charges into giggling, disoriented mobs. In Osaka, teenagers strapped homemade filters to the nodes, concentrating the pheromones into something that made them see the fractals of the universe, man. And then there were the outliers, the ones who didn't get high, the ones who got angry. Elara's screen flickered with footage from Buenos Aires, where a group of construction workers, instead of succumbing to the pacification field, had dismantled a node with crowbars and repurposed its core into a makeshift flamethrower. The caption beneath the video read, "Paxify this, alien bastards." She exhaled sharply. They're treating it like an immune response. Across the planet, humanity was doing what it did best, metabolizing the foreign substance and spitting it back out as something unrecognizable. In the crystalline chamber of Xanthis Prime, Chair Being Vrixtal reviewed the Phase 1 reports with growing irritation. His 4 hands flicked through holograms displaying erratic biofeedback readings, his primary eyes narrowing at the statistical anomalies. "Explain these deviations," he demanded, mandibles clicking in disapproval. The Quell engineer, its methane-breathing apparatus hissing, projected a stream of data. Localized resistance clusters, minor outliers. The overall compliance rate remains within acceptable parameters. Minor? Elara's voice crackled through the comms. She had been patched in as the GTC's reluctant human consultant. "You got entire subcultures forming around abusing your tech. This isn't a glitch. It's a cultural immune response." Vrixtal's exoskeleton rippled in disdain. Irrelevant. The harmony nodes are functioning as intended. The majority of the population exhibits reduced aggression. "The majority so far?" Elara shot back. "You're seeing what you want to see." Humans don't just accept changes to their environment. We fight them, even when it's stupid, especially when it's stupid. The Zykes Collective, their hive mind interface humming, pulsed in unison. "The specimens will adapt. Resistance is illogical." Elara wanted to scream. Instead, she pulled up a new dataset, a map of node locations overlaid with emergency response calls. "Look at this! Every node you've placed has become a focal point for either addiction or rebellion. You didn't just fail to pacify us, you armed us." Vrixtal dismissed the display with a wave. "Proceed with Phase 1 as planned. Double the emitter output." Elara's fingers clenched. "That will amplify the outliers." "The outliers," Vrixtal said coolly, "will be extinct soon enough." Javier Ruiz had been waiting for this. When the first node appeared in his neighborhood, he didn't run from it. He didn't lick it. He studied it. The retired Marine had spent enough tours in hostile territory to recognize an enemy supply drop when he saw one. By midnight, he and his crew had cracked open the node's casing, exposing its delicate inner workings. The pheromone reservoir glistened under their flashlights, a viscous, silver liquid that smelled like artificial lavender and bad decisions. All right, cabrones, Javier muttered, holding up a syringe. Let's see how they like their own medicine. 3 blocks away, a GTC scout drone hovered over a park, monitoring compliance rates. It did not notice the modified firework arcing toward it until the payload, a concentrated burst of Harmony pheromones, detonated directly in its sensors. The drone wobbled midair, then began spiraling in erratic loops, its programming scrambled by the very chemicals it was meant to distribute. Javier grinned. Welcome to Earth, pendejos. Back on Xenthys Prime, the GTC systems flagged the incident as a localized hardware malfunction. Ilara, watching the same data stream, knew better. Phase 1 had barely begun, and humanity was already rewriting the rules. The committee's models had accounted for atmospheric pressure, soil composition, even solar radiation. Not one line of code had calculated for spite. The Xenthys Prime central chamber hummed with the sterile efficiency of a surgical theater. Cherubing Vrixtel's upper arms manipulated holographic schematics of Earth's biomes, while the lower pair adjusted the nutrient flow algorithms for Phase 2. The uplift pods, neat geometric clusters of engineered flora, hovered in the projection like obedient soldiers. Primary growth metrics remain within optimal parameters, droned the Quell representative, its methane exhale frosting the air. Human interference remains statistically negligible. Vrixtel's ocular ridges flexed in satisfaction. Proceed with dispersal. On Earth, the pods fell like emerald rain. Javier Ruiz wiped sweat from his brow with a forearm tattooed with the words, "Fertilize the resistance." Around him, the guerrilla gardeners moved through the moonlit fields of Iowa like shadows, their gloves sticky with stolen uplift sap. "All right, listen up," Javier growled, hefting a modified seed drill. "The pendejos up there think we'll roll over for their pretty little weeds. Let's show them what happens when you gift-wrap kudzu to a species that weaponized bamboo." A teenager in a grotesque Vrixtel mask, now a black market sensation, snorted, "My abuela's poison ivy patch is itching for a crossbreed." The drill's word to life. 3 weeks later, the GTC's sensors lit up like a supernova. "Cherubing!" A Zix drone's voice fractured into a dozen panicked harmonics. "The uplift pods, they're adapting." Vrixtel's claws spasmed around the data tablet. The feed showed tendrils of something that had once been an uplift vine, now strangling a purification spire in Buenos Aires. The leaves had developed serrated edges. The roots secreted a corrosive gel. And the pollen, why are humans cultivating it? Vrixtel shrieked. Dr. Ilara Voss, lurking at the chamber's periphery, bit her tongue. The answer was scrolling across her illicit feed. Spike gardening trended alongside tutorials for splicing uplift genes into Venus flytraps. "Explain this." Vrixtel slammed a holocapture onto the table. The image showed a child in a Sao Paulo favela grinning as they fed an uplift berry to a rat. The rodent promptly gnawed through a GTC surveillance drone. Ilara cleared her throat. "Behavioral contingencies, Cherubing. You assumed humans would reject inefficient flora. Instead, they're curating the mutations. That berry would... It's now a street snack called Alien Adderall." The Quell representative's gills flared. "This is illogical. Our models accounted for nothing," Ilara snapped. "Your pacification pheromones became party drugs. Your crops are being turned into biological shivs. At what point does the committee admit it's outmatched?" The chamber vibrated with hissed calculations. Vrixtel's voice dropped to a sub-zero whisper. "Phase 3 will proceed as scheduled. Faunal replacement begins tomorrow." Ilara's fist clenched around the smuggled comms device in her pocket. Javier's last message glowed against her palm. "Send us their playbook. We'll make sure every docile alien cow ends up as a rodeo clown." That night, in a derelict hydroponics lab, Alara faced Javier's hologram. They're bringing in herbivores, genetically lobotomized, perfectly edible. Javier's grin was a blade. Oh, Hermano, do they want us to deep fry their sacred cows? Behind him, a masked figure waved a freshly printed t-shirt. Ilara exhaled. Just promise me one thing. When this is over, she said, save me a bite. The transmission ended as the first gentle grazer pods breached the atmosphere. On Zenthis Prime, the GTC's alarms blared a serene, algorithmic chime. All parameters nominal, the system announced. Vrixtel's mandibles clicked in relief. Far below, a butcher in Mumbai sharpened his knives. The Zenthis Prime central chamber, a geodesic dome of self-repairing quantum glass, pulsed with the sterile glow of holographic projections. Vrixtel's upper arms flicked through damage reports while the lower pair clutched a data tablet with enough force to crack its crystalline surface. The feed from Mumbai played on loop, a human child, face smeared with grease, grinning as they bit into a deep-fried gentle grazer leg. The caption read, EXT recipe Alien chicken 1010 po 10 would eat again. This is statistically impossible, hissed Quell engineer Crick7, their methane vents flaring. The grazers were designed with repulsive pheromone signatures. Even your planet's most primitive scavengers should find them delicious, interrupted Zix Node 451, its voice a chorus of 1,000 synchronized whispers. The humans marinated them in capsaicin extract. Our models did not account for culinary warfare. Vrixtel's ocular ridges twitched. The GTC's projections had accounted for resistance, sabotage even, but not this. Not a global festival of deep-fried defiance. The emergency session had devolved into chaos. Quell factions demanded orbital sterilization, the Zix collective proposed neural reprogramming, and the lesser species huddled in corners, whispering about human contagion. On Earth, Javier Ruiz wiped grease from his hands and grinned at the drone footage hovering above his improvised grill. The gentle grazers, those dopey six-legged herbivores. The GTC had dropped last week, sizzled in oil beside a heap of chili peppers. His livestream counter ticked past 50 million views. Oi, Zenthis! He waved a drumstick at the sky. Your perfect livestock tastes better with lime. Send more! The crowd roared. Someone had strapped a stolen harmony node to a donkey. The pheromones turned its bray into a psychedelic warble. Children scampered through the smoke, wearing masks of Vrixtel's face stretched into grotesque frowns. GTC is fracturing. They're debating extermination versus surrender. Leak incoming. Amplify it. Back in orbit, Vrixtel slammed a fist, a human gesture. They realized too late onto the deliberation podium. Enough. The grazer debacle is a setback, not a failure. Proceed to Phase 4, aquatic recalibration. Crick C7's vents hissed. And when the humans turn our coral replacements into knives, then we purge the infestation, rumbled the Quell overseer, their carapace glistening with combat pheromones. The chamber lights flickered. A hologram glitched, replaced by a grainy close-up of Vrixtel's face, digitally altered to wobble like gelatin. A voice, distorted to sound like a whining child, echoed, Wah! The humans won't eat their veggies! Zix! Node 451 spasmed, its harmony disrupted. They've breached our entertainment feeds. Vrixtel's mandibles locked. This wasn't sabotage. This was mockery. Ilara crouched in a derelict subway tunnel, her fingers flying across a stolen GTC terminal. The Zenthis Prime's firewalls were elegant, designed to repel quantum hackers, not the 14-year-old Finnish prodigy Shed recruited, whose malware was disguised as a Minecraft mod. Got it, the kid muttered, teeth glowing in the screen's blue light. Their private session logs? They're scared. Alara skimmed the transcripts. Human resistance correlates with density of recreational intoxicants. Proposal: flood their neurotransmitter receptors with compliance stimulants. Counterproposal: glass the hemisphere and start over. The hashtag trended globally within minutes. Memes mutated faster than the GTC could analyze them. Vrixtel's face photoshopped onto crying infants. Quell engineers fleeing from chili peppers. The Xenthys Prime recast as a floating McDonald's. In Lagos, a street vendor sold alien zinger skewers. In Berlin, protesters hurled Harmony grenades now repurposed as party favors at drone patrols. And in orbit, Vrixtel stared at the latest report. Humans were breeding the gentle grazers, not for food, for blood sports. The creatures, genetically optimized for docility, had been crossbred with pit bulls and roosters. The video attached showed a grazer, its fluffy hide dyed neon pink, launching a Quell survey drone into a wall with a single kick. "Why?" Vrixtel whispered. "Zix," Node 451 pulsed mournfully. "Because we told them not to." The crystalline walls of Xenthys Prime hummed with the sterile efficiency of 1,000 interlocking systems, each calibrated to perfection. Vrixtel's 4 hands danced across the holographic interface, reviewing the latest projections for the 7th time. The numbers should have been pristine. The models should have been flawless. Instead, they were gibberish. "Explain," Vrixtel hissed, mandibles twitching. Zyx Node 451 pulsed nervously, its hive mind synapses flickering. The human variable has mutated. On the screen, the atmospheric recalibration algorithm had been replaced by a looping animation of a crude stick figure urinating on the GTC insignia. Beneath it, scrolling text read, "Optimize this." Crouched in the ruins of an abandoned subway tunnel, she watched as Javier Ruiz's team spliced the final wires into the GTC's planetary uplink. So, the air smelled of ozone and sweat. The dim glow of jury-rigged monitors casting jagged shadows across the graffiti-scarred walls, most of which depicted Vrixtel in increasingly unflattering poses. "They really don't like being told what to do, huh?" Javier grinned, wiping grease from his hands. Ilara snorted. "You turn their docility pheromones into a street drug and their crops into weapons-grade kudzu. What did you expect?" Javier's smile sharpened. "For them to learn." The GTC's orbital projectors, designed to regulate Earth's weather, had been hijacked. Instead of dispersing atmospheric stabilizers, they now etched a kilometer-wide caricature of Vrixtel's face across the stratosphere, complete with exaggerated wobbling mandibles and the caption, "Kiss the Grazer." On the streets, humans cheered. Children pointed. The Quell overseers screamed. The holographic displays flickered between corrupted data streams and viral human memes. One screen showed a deep-fried gentle grazer leg, battered and glistening, being dipped into a neon orange sauce labeled Alien Adderall. Another played a looped clip of a human toddler, stomping on a Harmony node while giggling hysterically. "This is not statistically possible," the Quell overseer droned, its methane vents flaring. "Our models accounted for resistance, but not this." "What is this?" Vrixtel demanded. Zix Node 451 hesitated. "They call it malicious compliance." A tweak to the chloroplasts, a nudge to the root systems, human crops now thrived on the GTCs. Purification chemicals, metabolizing them into toxins that stank of rancid citrus and spite. Javier's people had dispersed it through irrigation lines, smuggled it in seed packets, even aerosolized it into the vents of GTC outposts. Within hours, the uplift pods withered. The soil itself seemed to recoil from the aliens' touch. A single, system-wide ping to Zenthes Prime, carrying a compressed file labeled Behavioral Contingencies. Vrixtol opened it. Climate models recalculated based on spite density metrics. Hydroponic gardens grew nothing but middle fingers, sculpted from bioluminescent mold. The Zix Collective's hive mind, fragmented under the weight of a million contradictory human thought patterns, mostly memes about Vrixtol's face. Every speaker on Zenthes Prime erupted with a deafening, off-key rendition of Never Gonna Give You Up. Vrixtol's exoskeleton paled to a sickly gray. They rickrolled us. Think they'll surrender? Javier asked, popping open a beer. Ilara smirked. But they'll never forget us. Above them, the sky burned with humanity's defiance, written in stolen starlight and pure, unfiltered spite. The Zenthes Prime shuddered like a dying beast, its crystalline spires flickering in erratic pulses. Inside the central chamber, Vrixtol's forearms twitched in a rare display of agitation, their usual fluid grace replaced by the jerky motions of a being whose worldview had just been cracked open and found hollow. The holographic displays around them spat corrupted data. Human spite had infiltrated even the GTC's most sacred analytics, warping climate projections into surrealist art. One screen looped a crude animation of Vrixtol's face melting into a chili pepper. Behavioral contingencies, the Quell overseer hissed, their methane vents flaring. You assured us there were none. Vrixtol's vocal sac darkened with shame. The models accounted for resistance, not this. They gestured to a feet of earth, where the terraforming filters had been repurposed into towering graffiti canvases, their surfaces plastered with obscene caricatures of the committee. On the planet below, Ilara Voss watched the sky bleed orange through the cracked dome of a reclaimed Harmony node. The air smelled of burnt circuitry and victory. Javier Ruiz lounged beside her, idly tossing a stolen Zix neural relay between his hands like a baseball. Think they'll glass us now? He asked, grinning. Ilara snorted. They can't. Their own protocols won't let them escalate without unanimous vote, and the Zix just went into hivelock trying to process the concept of meme warfare. She tapped her wrist display, pulling up a live feed of the Zenthes Prime's debate chamber. The Quell were screeching about sterilization protocols, while the Zix Collective's drones milled in confused circles, their hive mind fragmented by humanity's viral absurdity. Vrixtol's voice, usually a model of measured authority, cracked as they addressed the panicking assembly. The human species operates on a flawed paradigm. They prioritize symbolic defiance over survival. A junior Quell engineer, their exoskeleton still stained with spicy batter from the gentle grazer incident, whimpered. They fried our specimens. In oil. Vrixtol ignored them, pulling up the last intact simulation. Our final option is the Alzarian Protocol, atmospheric destabilization to induce forced compliance. Even the Zyx drones paused mid-whir. Then the feed from Earth cut in. A child no older than 6, wearing a grotesque Vrixtol mask, stood in front of a captured Harmony node, now repainted to resemble a clown. They held up a sign scrawled in crayon. The image froze, pixelated, then spread across every screen in the chamber like a virus. On the ground, Javier whooped as the orbital platform's lights winked out one by one. Alien Adderall just got a hard reboot. She watched the stars, waiting for the retaliation that never came. They're leaving, she murmured, and they were. The Xanthus Prime disengaged its docking clamps with unseemly haste, its engines flaring in a retreat that would later be scrubbed from all official records. The GTC's farewell transmission was a single line of text, routed through 17 layers of encryption. The Quell Overseer stood before the new Galactic Council, mandibles trembling. "We propose a new classification for humanity," they announced, and the chamber leaned in, eager for wisdom. The Overseer hesitated. Then, in a whisper that would haunt the cosmos for eons, "Spite-based life forms." Meanwhile, on Earth, Javier bit into a deep-fried gentle grazer wing and grinned at the sky. "Told you we'd win." Alara, now head of the Department of Unplanned Consequences, just sighed and adjusted her new badge, a glitter-covered middle finger etched in stolen alien alloy. Above them, the stars twinkled, but never again would they dare blink. The Xanthus Prime's retreat was not a surrender, not officially. The GTC's final report, buried under layers of bureaucratic euphemism, cited unforeseen nonlinear resilience factors as the reason for termination. Privately, Frixto's last log entry was less diplomatic. "Recommend immediate quarantine of Sol system. Subject species exhibits adaptive hostility. Terraforming attempts only increase their capacity for defiance." Hypothesis: human spite operates as an infinite resource. Back on Earth, the victory was celebrated with fireworks crafted from scavenged Harmony node components. Javier, now a folk hero, grinned through a mouthful of fried alien protein. "They thought we'd roll over for some fancy air filters," he crowed, tossing a gentle grazer, bone to a barking dog genetically modified to also bark in Morse code, "Geo away." Alara, however, kept her eyes on the data feeds. Her Department of Unplanned Consequences was already drafting contingency plans, not for alien reinvasion, but for humanity's next act of glorious irrationality. "They'll be back," she muttered, though the twitch at the corner of her mouth betrayed her pride. "And well be worse." Across the galaxy, the legend spread. The Quell's classification, spite-based life forms, was quietly adopted, then hastily amended when humans began trademarking it. The Zykes Collective, traumatized by memes of their drones photoshopped into clown cars, voted unanimously to never speak of Earth again. You can terraform deserts, you can optimize atmospheres, but you can't out-engineer a toddler with a crayon and a grudge. Content, a single audio clip, a raspberry noise, looped endlessly into the void.